after these previous speakers that have spoken already this evening, but I'll do my best to make it interesting for you, and hopefully we can get some information that is relevant to what we have to do. I have a presentation here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Hockel. As Chaplain Miner said before, I'm from California Wing. I was asked to talk about three major things tonight, and the first is the role of the National Cadet Advisory Council as it relates to Civil Air Patrol. The next thing I'm going to talk about is my thoughts on the current character development program, and I'm going to finish tonight with an overview of how I earned my Model Rocketry Badge in Civil Air Patrol and what the process is for that. So I've been in CAP almost 8 years as a cadet. And I'm convinced that it's one of the best, if not the best, youth organization in the world. Part of the reason why I believe that is because we as cadets are not only trusted to lead most of the cadet program, but we can also help improve it based on what we've seen and experienced in our time in the program. So as most of you are aware, CAP has a structure for cadets in which they can voice their opinions and plans for the future or ideas for the future called the Cadet Advisory Council, or CAC. So really quickly, I'm going to talk about what the CAC is. And basically, it's just a council of representatives from lower units. So you have a council for the group made up of representatives from the squadron, or if you don't have a group, you have a council from the wing made up of representatives from the squadrons. And then it goes up. You have region councils made up of representatives from the wing, and then of course the national council made up of representatives from the region. And the purpose of these councils is mostly to, like it's in the name, advise on the changes that the cadet program faces as we move throughout time, basically. So if a commander wants to implement a change in the program, usually he or she will ask his or her cadet advisory council on any feedback that they have for it and how the cadet population would receive it. Another purpose for the Cadet Advisory Council is to solve problems of cadet life. So not only to give feedback on changes that are going to be implemented, but also to be able to see what the problems are that sometimes the commanders might not be able to see. So it gives the cadets that opportunity to raise those problems to somebody who can be able to deal with it, and then the Cadet Advisory Council comes up with solutions to those ideas. And the last point I have here is, again, to come up with the ideas that will be able to improve cadet life in the program. So not only just solving problems, but also coming up with ideas that will move the program in a direction that is useful, not just for the members, but also for the community around it. So why is CAC important? We talked about what it is, but why is it important? Why do we even need it as an organization? Well, the first is it gives commanders cadet perspective on issues that they may not have already. So a lot of the times, at least in my experience, commanders have a hard time being able to see the program from a cadet perspective. And the council is important because it gives commanders that tool to be able to get that perspective as they make command decisions throughout any challenges that their unit may be facing. It's also a structured feedback system for the organization. So any change that is implemented, so let's say there was a change that a wing made to an encampment. CAC is a structured feedback system where representatives from each of those units are able to represent their units in turn by getting their feedback from any of those changes that were made, and present that to the commander. So it's kind of that, it's a set way for feedback to be addressed right up to the commander. And lastly, it's a medium for new ideas to be heard. So a lot of the times, newer members especially are motivated to contribute to the organization, and in some senses there's not a lot of ways for them to get their ideas heard, but CAC provides that medium for those ideas to be passed up, especially if they're good ones. Okay, so that's why it's important. Let's talk about the impact that the CAC has on the cadet program and what difference it's made since we've had it. Well, the first thing is, and I think this is the most important, is it makes cadets' voices feel heard and valued. And that's something that's especially important in Civil Air Patrol, being a volunteer organization, is making sure that members are heard. And while most of the organization is led by our senior member commanders, the ability to raise at least any concerns that we have or opinions that we have makes a huge difference on cadet morale, especially being able to support commanders in their role as commanding any unit. The next thing is it teaches cadets to critically think about current issues that are facing the organization. So as commanders are making these decisions, it's also cadets that are looking at these problems that the organization faces, mostly focusing on the cadet program, but it challenges them to critically think about the issues that are facing at that level. So you have a wing CAC, they'll be focusing on the issues that are specific to that wing, and it challenges them to think critically about the things that they can do to improve or address the challenges that arise. And then as you go up in organizational levels, and once you get to the national level, you're at the most strategic level thinking, and it's a very, very big challenge for a lot of people, especially because they don't really have exposure to that before then. And lastly, it allows room to grow in leadership beyond the local level. So after cadets are done being a cadet commander, or after they've done all the roles that they really can at the local unit, there's not a lot of places for them to go. Obviously, there's outside activities, but the CAC is more than just an activity. It's really a program that cadet officers, especially senior cadet officers, are able to go and really learn more about what indirect leadership is and how strategic leadership can affect the lives of cadets, even at the local level from thousands of miles away. Now, I kind of talked about it before, but the last point I had here for the impact on the cadet program was it challenges cadets to think strategically, which is something that isn't challenged a whole lot, especially not over a long-term period. Most of the strategic level challenges that cadets are faced with are at week-long activities or courses over the 6-month period. But CAC is a year-long term, and it challenges cadets, again, to think about strategic level solutions to complex problems and implement them and evaluate the change that they've implemented. So I personally was amazed at how much I learned being on the council this year so far. I was challenged to think about issues that arose during the term, discuss what the best solutions would be, and present the solutions to other people. And being challenged in that way has helped me gain a lot of skills that I can now take to pursuing my goal of owning my own business one day. And that's something that I'm very, very grateful for. And it's something that it's not, the opportunity to grow in those skills is not given in a lot of other places. But let's talk about the NCAC specifically. So I've had the distinct privilege of serving on the National Cadet Advisory Council this year, representing my region, the Pacific region. And since the NCAC is the highest council in CAP, we, by nature, focus on the biggest picture issues presented to cadet life, including, of course, specifically this term, how to operate during a global pandemic. And operating virtually is challenging. And what we've focused on is giving local units the tools and resources that they need to be able to run meetings virtually and effectively to be able to check in on their members. And the reason why we focused on it so much and why it was so important to us is, well, number one, because it's necessary for keeping cadets engaged and motivated in the program, but it's also good for our organization to check in on our members' mental health, especially during the lockdown. I'm from California, so we were very, very locked down here. But I thought it was very, very important for organizations like Civil Air Patrol to be able to check in with their members' mental health, especially because a lot of people during these past couple months have been challenged in ways that really they had never have before. And checking in with them, even just week to week, I think has been helpful not only for the organization, but for the people in the organization, the members. And one notable thing that was accomplished by the National Cadet Advisory Council before this term was the naming of some of the cadet officer achievements to reflect our aerospace history in America and mirror our emphasis on diversity for future STEM and aerospace leaders. So you can see one of our pictures here in the bottom middle. This was the council from last year presenting the 3 achievements that we've recently named. That was one of the biggest accomplishments that happened in recent history for the NCAC, but there's plenty of notable things that we've done this term as well. And one of the things that I want to bring up, other than addressing the COVID-19 situation, was that this council has also been working on exploring programs to get audio recordings for textbooks and manuals to help members with any reading disabilities as much as possible. And being able to include, again, and make this organization as fair and equal access to everybody. That has been a very, very significant point that the council has been working on this term. And again, there's a whole bunch of things that we've been working on, but the biggest thing that I want to summarize for the National Cadet Advisory Council is that it really is important to me, especially because it's a way for cadets to be able to be a part of where this organization is going. And having a say in what happens in the current events is, I think, one of the most important ways to keep members engaged, especially past the local level. Okay, the next thing I would like to cover that I was asked to cover this evening was character development and my current thoughts on the program. And one thing I want to draw attention to for this program, specifically within the cadet programs, is that the structure seems to be different from the other elements of the cadet program. And I'm going to clarify on that a little bit. But before I get into that specifically, I want to kind of overview what the biggest exposures that I've experienced to the character development element has been. So obviously we have our major exposures that cadets see, and that's the monthly character development sessions at the weekly meetings for cadets. And these are one hour sessions that they participate in. The next is encampment. There's a character requirement that encampments have to fill. And the last that I've seen that is kind of one of the biggest things that cadets are exposed to within the character development is drug demand reduction. And so I'm going to be going over each of these and my kind of thoughts on these as they're being implemented and also as they're designed. So we have squadron meetings, so these are 1 hour each month. And recently there's been a change from our flight time model to our current model, which is more of a interactive model. And I thought that this change was super good, not only for keeping cadets engaged, but also involving more people in the process so that people are challenged to think a little bit more. And obviously these are led by character development instructors, but they're also led by the senior leadership of the cadets. So the cadets are actually involved with helping teaching this. And I thought that was a very, very good change from maybe one instructor doing it every single time. So definitely some pluses there. And the other thing I like about this model is that there are multiple breakout sessions per session. So instead of having maybe one breakout session at the end of the flight time model, you're going to have a whole bunch of things that are led by not just the lead instructor, but also the phase 3 senior leadership officers. And I think that's good for not only encouraging people to, participate a little more fully, but also a little more in depth and give you those personal anecdotes of relating the material to their life and how they can do that. I've noticed that it focuses on the development of basic ethical living, and it gives practical methods of ethical living as a teenager. One of the examples that I saw recently was the X method, where teenagers and parents come up with a strategy to be able to get out of uncomfortable social situations. And I thought that that was super interesting and also very, very practical for what teenagers are facing today. So overall, I think for the character development sessions that happen monthly at the squadron meetings, I think that the change from flight time to our current model has been a very, very positive, well-received change overall. The next thing is encampment. So again, like I said, there's a character hour requirement that has to be filled at all encampments. And usually the church services that are offered, if offered, usually count for this. But one thing I wanted to note was other elements of the cadet program that are covered at encampments, such as aerospace, fitness, and leadership. They have upwards of 10 hours of requirement. So that's just something I want to point out, is that character only has 1 hour required, and the other ones have upwards of 10, 6, 12. So that's just something, I'm going to come back to that a little bit later, but encampment is another big exposure that cadets have regularly to the character development program. And the last thing I have here is drug demand reduction. So this, I've seen that the emphasis in this program has been less emphasized now. It's gone down, but I still think that it's been a very useful and thought-provoking program, for me at least, in my exposure to it. It focuses on educating cadets on harmful substances and how to avoid them and identify them. And there's a wide range of topics that has been covered and can be covered in this program. And one thing that I thought was very interesting was the DDRX program, and it's a little bit out of date, but the Drug Demand Reduction Excellence Program was something that I completed in 2015, and I found it to be one of the most interesting programs that I'd completed in Civil Air Patrol, because it was very accurate, not accurate, it was very applicable to what the friends that I had in high school, but also the environment that teenagers are now growing up in. And I thought that it was very thought-provoking again, and it challenged me to kind of think about what the impact of having a drug-free life can have on your success. And so I thought that was very useful for me, at least. Okay, so those were the three main exposures that I've seen that cadets have to character development. And the next thing I kind of want to talk about is the evaluation that Civil Air Patrol currently has for character. And there are three main things, and the first is the leadership feedback meetings. So these are the meetings that the squadron has with cadets. It's required at least once per phase, so 4 times in a cadet's career, but some squadrons use it every promotion, so that happens every time they want to rank up. And the good thing about these is they provide objective measures of cadets and adherence to core values, and it provides a system for feedback. So if a cadet is not meeting a very clear standard that is set for them, the leadership feedback meetings are a way to be able to help them improve in those areas. And I think that that's entirely helpful, especially because the standards that they are expected to be upheld to widen and get a little bit more challenging as you move throughout the program. The next thing that is a measure of character in the Civil Air Patrol program is the moral reasoning and achievement acre and spots essays and speeches. Now that's according to the CAP regulation 60-1 1, which is cadet programs management. And I think that that's good for evaluating reasoning and communication skills, but until you really get to the spots essay, most of the content of those speeches and essays are focused on leadership concepts as opposed to ethical or moral concepts. And the last point I have for evaluation is informal measure of participation for promotion. So most promotions in the cadet program require that they participate in at least one character development session at the squadron. So I'm sure you all know this, but it's measured informally and it has to happen at least once. But that's for all the cadets. So cadet airmen, NCOs, and officers all have to do that same requirement. My thoughts on the program currently are, as it stands, most of the character development, from what I've seen, outside of evaluation and more about the program, is aimed at phase 1 and 2 cadets. Character, as I've stated before, is one of the 4 elements of the cadet program as stated by the CAP Regulation 60-1. There are the 4 elements, again, like I said before. There's character, obviously, but then there's fitness, aerospace, and leadership. The aerospace, leadership, and fitness all have evaluations and tests that progressively get more challenging as you go throughout the program. So the requirements that you're expected to meet for those 3 elements get progressively more difficult. The requirements for character, however, do not get progressively more challenging, as everything up until the spots exam, when you write your essay, which is obviously a great step in the expectations that you're held to, everything up until then is pretty much the same from what I've observed. So officers are required to participate in the same sessions for each promotion as cadet airmen. And again, like I said before, the spots essay is again a big step, but it's more focused on evaluation and moral reasoning and not the development of character. So from what I've observed of the program, it seems that the progression of developing seems to take a really big step at the end. And I think that the cadet program is about challenging cadets to constantly improve. And from what I've seen, cadet officers view character development as a lower priority in the program simply because it's not challenging. And I'm not saying that the content of what the character development sessions have been presenting are not useful to them. It's just something that the level of thinking and the level of participation that's required never increases, and it stays constant throughout the program. And the last point I'll have here about some of the current issues is the activities. This may not be as big of an issue to other people, but most of the activities that cadets participate in are focused on the other pillars: fitness, leadership, and aerospace. And I guess by nature of the program that we have, I guess that's probably why most cadets join the program. But from what I can tell, there's a very, very limited number of activities that focuses on character. And obviously you have the National Character Symposium and other activities such as that are hosted at lower levels. But it seems to me that there is a clear lack of focus on, and not lack of focus, but there's less of a focus on character than the other pillars, elements of the cadet program. And I think that that should, especially because the issues that today's society is facing is becoming more and more as ethical dilemmas and moral dilemmas, as opposed to clearly just clearly defined problems. They're a little bit more abstract nowadays. So moving forward, I think that cadets should be challenged to grow in character beyond other teenagers their age, and that's what they do. So our current cadet members are given the character development sessions each month, and they're challenged to think beyond what our current average teenager in America thinks at. But further from that, I think that cadet officers should be challenged beyond cadet NCOs and airmen. So as our members, as a general just baseline, are above the the average teenager for America. I think that cadet officers, as senior level cadets who've put a lot of time and effort into this program, I think that the level of expectation that we have for their character development should be a little bit higher than airmen and NCOs. Region Cadet Leadership Schools challenge cadet officers to think about complex, sometimes abstract, moral and ethical issues and dilemmas. And I believe that implementing a program for cadet officers to develop ethical reasoning will not only help them stay engaged in character development throughout the program, but it will also help senior cadets to get more out of the program, specifically when it comes to character. So in summary, the current method is a significant improvement from the flight time method when you're talking about the monthly sessions that cadets participate in. They're much more engaging for NCOs and airmen. But as a final note, I believe that the program is lacking in character development for cadet officers. And I'm not saying we're not doing anything, but I'm saying that we could be challenging the cadet officers in our program to be thinking at a little bit higher levels, especially because those are the next aerospace and STEM leaders. And a lot of the issues that were brought up by even the last presenter in this meeting are going to be faced by some of the cadets in this organization. And getting them exposure to those issues now as opposed to down the line will get them thinking a little bit more and hopefully challenge them to develop beyond what they currently have. So those are my current thoughts on the current character development program. I see that there's been a lot of questions since I've started, so I'm going to keep pushing forward, and hopefully we can get those answered at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and move into the third section that I was asked to cover during this meeting, which is the Model Rocketry program and how I was able to earn my Model Rocketry badge in Civil Air Patrol. So I'm just going to overview firstly what the Model Rocketry program is. So there's 3 stages that we have for the Model Rocketry program. The first stage is the Redstone stage. And this stage is obviously, okay, so let me back up a little bit. Each of the different stages are named after obviously significant space, things that have happened in America relating to space. So that we have the Redstone stage, and that focuses on the history and the basic principles of rocketry. This is, again, mostly focused on the academic side and learning the basics and concepts behind what the cadets are going to be doing in the future. The next stage is the Titan stage, and in this you not only learn a little bit more about the basics, you get a little bit more in depth of the laws of motion, so Newton's 3 laws of motion, but also aerodynamics. And the Saturn stage is about actually how to launch your rockets and what the specific skills you need for launching these little tiny cardboard contraptions up into the air 500 feet. So that includes altitude tracking and model rocket engines, so the different types of engines that you might use. So there are 2 different portions of this program. Obviously, within each stage, you're going to have a classroom instruction, and that's going to always cover the principles and information relevant to the topics of each stage. So the things I just discussed, those are going to be focused on what is being talked about during the classroom portion of the program. And then it always has a test at the end of each stage to gauge the understanding of material, and all cadets have to pass that in order to move on to the next stage. But the most exciting part about the program is the building stage. Cadets build small things to help understand basic concepts. So for example, in the first stage, the Redstone stage, cadets build rubber band rockets to help with understanding the concepts of aerodynamics and which fin shapes are able to get the rocket to launch further. In the Titan stage, cadets are expected to build Alka-Seltzer rockets to help kind of give them an understanding of what Newton's 3rd law of motion is. And Alka-Seltzer rockets are basically just a small, very harmless chemical reaction that kind of like pops off the rocket. And it's sometimes referred to as a pop rocket, but those are very, very small, easy things to help cadets get a little bit more solid of an understanding of what's going on in the realm of rocketry. And then when you get into your Titan and Saturn stage, you get into building of actual model rockets. So in the Titan stage, cadets build 2 rockets, and the first one is a small, usually a simple rocket, usually 1 engine, and it has a recovery system, usually a parachute or a streamer to help it get back to the ground safely. The next thing that you build in the Titan stage is a replica of a real military rocket. So the one I did when I went through the program was the U.S. Army Patriot M104 air defense missile, and I was able to paint it and everything, and I gave it a little bit of a nickname, but it's a lot of fun to be able to learn about the history of each of the rockets that you're building, and kind of be able to see them in action. And then the last rocket that you are challenged to build as a cadet is the Saturn stage rocket, which is usually a challenge type of rocket. So there's an objective that you have to meet. An example of one of these objectives is you have to build a rocket that carries an egg up to 300 feet and returns it safely to the ground without cracking. That's one of the challenges. The challenge I chose to do when I went through the program was the 2-stage rocket. So I actually built a rocket that launched up on 1 engine and then ignited the next one and launched up another couple hundred feet. The cool thing about the model rocketry program is the team aspect of it. It's a very good way to increase team unity and morale, especially for squadrons at the local level. The cadets participating, you can see in these pictures on the slide, most of them are having fun, they're smiling. We're doing a lot of things that are very hands-on, which most of the time is a little bit more fun and interesting. And the cadets involved usually end up having a lot of fun along the way. The great thing though is that older cadets can come back and actually help the senior members instruct this program. So I came back a couple times to my squadron and I helped the younger cadets kind of go through this. And that's not only helpful to get to know them, but it's also helpful to pass on the information and the knowledge that you've received from this program. Now, by far, the best part of this program is the launching. And you can see the top right picture is the launching. But that's the most exciting portion of this program, in my opinion. Cadets are required to take a safety course prior to launching, and they have to pass a small test about the safety precautions of what they have to do in order to launch in a safe environment. And depending on resources, cadets can sometimes bring their own model rockets or even launch the ones that they've built more than once. Older cadets can also bring the rockets they created to launch again. So when I went back to help teach, I brought some of the rockets that I built. I brought my Army Patriot, and I launched that again a couple times. It's again dependent on the resources, but the difference, and there's a wide difference between how squadrons run these programs, but generally from what I've heard, the launch has been the most fun for everybody who's involved, even if you're not in the program per se. And after completion, obviously, and successful launch, cadets are awarded the badge at their squadron and wear it on the uniform. So I'm just going to show you, for those of you, I mean, probably most of you have seen it, but the badge on the uniform is just the rocket in a silver badge that is worn on the left breast pocket for males and above the nameplate for females. There's also a patch that you can wear on your ABU and BDU uniform, and it shows that you have a little bit more in-depth knowledge than your peers, and it kind of gives you a little bit of bragging rights in that area, but it also helps celebrate the growing emphasis on rocketry and space education moving forward. That's really what I have to talk to you. I'm probably a little bit under time, and I apologize for that, but I want to make sure that we have time for any questions that there are. But thank you everybody for letting me be able to present tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm very, very deeply honored to be at this event, and thank you again.
Cadet Hockel, thank you so very much from all of us and the Civil Air Patrol Chaplain Corps to have you come and speak to us. And the comments are glowing, of course, for your presentation. I'm going to turn it over to the 2 moderators. We have 5 minutes left before, just like the schoolroom bell rings, and of course everybody's going to get up. but I'll ask our moderators to each ask one question, an important question off of their forums, and to you. Thank you again.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm on. First of all, I did not hear where you're going to school in Kansas.
Atchison, it's a small school in Atchison called Benedictine College.
Thank you. Okay, I'm a wildcat from Manhattan. I'm sure that the CAC generates a ton of great ideas. Who specifically ultimately has a say on what is acted upon?
So that's a great question. The CAC as a council follows parliamentary procedures. So the members of the council, each of the representatives from the different region are equally able to present ideas, but as a council, we vote on what we move forward on and what we approve. So at least for what we work on within the council, it's the members on it that take a vote every time that there's something. It's very, very structured, and we follow Robert's Rules of Order very strictly, but it's, to answer the question, it's the members of the council that decide on what we move forward with.
Okay, I think the question really goes to, do you report to Kurt LaFond or do you report directly up to General Smith?
Okay, that's a good question. So as a representative, I technically report to Colonel Pongratz, who's the chair. So each of our councils has a chair who's in charge of moderating the discussion, and the chair reports to the cadet programs, who reports to the national commander. So there's a couple of steps, but we're a national council, so we fall under the national commander, I guess technically, but I don't directly report to General Smith.
Okay, and let's turn it over to Captain Parsons.
Thank you, sir. One question that we have is, what feedback have you received about issues or the mentality from cadets during the lockdown from COVID, and how can senior members aid them?
The feedback that I've seen regarding at least cadets in the program, it's been pretty limited. I know that a lot of cadets have stopped coming to meetings, and that squadrons are having a lot of difficulty being able to get cadets back and involved in the program. I really think that the solution to that is to have worthwhile meetings that cadets want, that are worth the cadets' time, because especially now, cadets are having, people in general are having to make really, really hard decisions about how they spend their time. And if CAP, especially at the local level, can make those week-to-week meetings worth their time and very, very interesting, then hopefully we can get a little bit more participation. I've really seen that the biggest issue during the lockdown is participation in virtual meetings, though.
Well, thank you again on behalf of our Chief of Chaplains up, and he's there, and I'll just turn the gavel over to him, sir.
Thank you, Chaplain Miner. I just want to take a moment and say thank you to all our presenters. This has been wonderful as we've had this opportunity to spend time together tonight. Thank you, Chaplain Sutter, Chaplain Telton, Chaplain Coleman, Cadet Hockel. Just thank you so much. Chaplain Yelton, excuse me, I pronounced your name wrong. I apologize. But for everyone, thank you so much for these wonderful presentations. A lot to think through and a lot to work through. Also want to thank Chaplain Miner and Chaplain Williams for their expert assistance in the IT departments and helping us again. We've got one more. Can you believe it? Our time is almost done, but we've got one more presentation together on Thursday. I'm looking forward to everyone being together. So let me close with a word of prayer. Let me also say, God bless you. Have a great evening. Thank you so much to everyone. And may God meet your needs in a very special way. Let's pray. Father,